All police are faced with officer survival every time they find themselves alone while dealing with a violent subject. They're left to cope the best they can until backup arrives. When a conflict goes to the ground, officers need fighting skills created for self-defense and taking the subject into custody. Programs that instruct fighting in a sports or martial arts arena are irrelevant. In police work, the ultimate goal is handcuffing, not beating or choking someone into submission. Ground Combatives for Police teaches everything needed to prevail on the ground. Arm bars, neck restraints, effective striking, blocking, head cranks, grappling, edged weapon attacks, controlling subject who pull guns, weapon retention, use of leverage, momentum, and body mechanics to create a much stronger you. Effective tactics for mount, side mount, and guard positions, and how to counterattack from every position. CQB Incorporated founder Chuck Habermill has 18 years in law enforcement as Deputy Chief of Police, firearms instructor, tactical trainer, and SWAT team commander. He has combined his law enforcement experience with judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and street fighting to create Ground Combatives for Police. All tactics in this dynamic training video are combat proven and usable by police officers wearing full uniform and gear. Lawmen aren't all in the best of physical shape, but all cops put their lives on the line every day. No matter if he's weak, fat, small, or old, every officer on the street can meet with sudden violence. Ground Combatives for Police will teach you how to protect yourself using the resources that you have, not with what some guy who's on the cover of a magazine has. Train hard, fight easy. There is no acceptable alternative.
First off, it doesn't hurt to be a big, strong person, okay? But realistically, most people aren't. And so what we look for are techniques that work areas that don't require strength. We look at leverage as part of the techniques, proper body mechanics to helping the technique work. So if you're a small person, if you're not as strong as the person that you're up against, through proper body mechanics, through correct leverage, through correct technique, we can maximize all those things and create a stronger you so that you can help defend yourself. Hey, the only choices are either realize the fact that, hey, I'm smaller or weaker, I don't go home tonight, or have a survival mindset that we're going to buy time. And that's all we try to do anyway in all of this combatives areas. We're not looking to see who can we beat and defeat, because there's always a bigger person or more of them. We look at it from an angle of how much time can I buy. With a smaller adversary, I can buy this much time. With a bigger guy, I buy this much time. But I'm always going to be in a position to buy time. Whether there's 3 of you or you're bigger or whatever, I'm going to buy some time. And if I look at it that, and I know that I can buy time no matter what the odds are, then I'm in a positive survival mindset, as opposed to being a defeatist mindset going, oh, I'm outnumbered, I'm in trouble, and now I pack it in before I'm ready to throw in the towel. This subject is not addressed in the police academies across the country. It is not addressed in the in-service programs across the country. So in essence, what you're doing is you're training the law enforcement officer to deal what I call in passive resistance situations. And when the aggressive resisting starts and that confrontation 75 to 85% of the time ends up on the ground, this officer is ill-prepared to protect himself, to retain his weapon, to defend against edged weapons, and so he's going to be a statistic. That's what's going to happen.
Okay, Daniel's going to be giving us a hand today working on the police ground combatives. One of the first things we want to talk about is a solid base. We know that when we're standing up and we're doing our regular striking techniques or our elbows and knees, a solid base is important. For instance, if Daniel has his feet too close together, doesn't give him any stability, he ends up getting knocked off his feet rather easily. By the same token, if he's got such a wide base, he has plenty of stability. He's pretty solid there, but he lacks now mobility. He can't move quick. So we want to make sure his feet are about shoulder width apart. He has both stability, he's in there pretty tight, and he's got mobility. He can move quick, forward, back, lateral movement, whatever he needs to do. The same occurs when we're on the ground. We're looking for a strong base when we're on the ground. A strong base on the ground, if we look at an insufficient base, I'm in a side mount position now. If I got my feet close together, the same thing we talked about when we were standing, I have no stability here. So when he goes to move or roll me over, it's real easy for him to do that. I don't have any solid base whatsoever to speak of. So in an effort to prevent that, same thing as when we're standing, we want to keep a good solid base. So I'm in here. Notice the difference now, how my feet are spread. When he goes to roll now, it's a lot more difficult for him to move simply because I've moved my feet and established a good solid base, and that's going to be real important for us. Another thing we want to talk about is using our weight to our advantage. Here again, if I get on top of Daniel, here again in the side mount, and I have my knees on the ground as my chest is on his chest, I'm 175 pounds, I'm probably putting about 25% of my weight on Daniel, which is not good. There again, when he goes to turn inside me and kick his hips out, he can do that movement rather easily simply because I don't have my weight on him like I'm supposed to. Let's do it a different way now. Let's get the same side mount, and let me take my knees off the ground and put all my weight on Daniel. Now let's kick his hips up. It makes it very difficult, if not almost impossible, for him to get his body kicked out because I'm using my weight to my advantage, and that's important. A couple other things we want to talk about here. In whatever position we're in, and we're going to go over the 6 different positions we're going to work in today in just a second, but what's important here is that we always stay in close. Anytime there's distance between you and the subject, distance means counter. That's what it means to me. It also means getting hit. So I don't want any distance to be here. So I'm going to be in here close, doing what we call a sticky man philosophy. In other words, I'm in here sticking to him like glue. I'm down here tight. It prevents him from doing anything to me, and I can do a lot of things to him by just staying in close to him. Same thing if it's reversed and he's on top of me. I want to keep him down here in close to me. I don't want him to have this range where he can do a lot of damage and by doing striking techniques and reaching for arm bars for me and everything else. I want to get him down in here, sticky man philosophy, where I can deal with him by keeping my body close to him. That's an important aspect of the ground combatives. Still talking about basics now. We're looking at putting not only do we want a solid base in all these positions, we want to make sure that we've got close contact, and then I want to try to minimize his foot movement back there by putting my hooks into his legs back there in the back. That prevents him from doing almost any techniques and using his legs as leverage by me just tying up his legs. It takes very little strength on my part and a sufficient or significant amount of strength on his part to try to break that particular leg lock. And until he does that, he's very restricted on the type of counters that he can do from the position when I'm in the mount position. We want to make sure that we never give the subject our back. In other words, what that means is if Daniel rolls over this way and I'm on top, when I get to his back, it makes it very easy now for me to sink a neck restraint or a chokehold. We know that in chokeholds I can squeeze him in 3 to 6 minutes. He's never going to move again for the rest of his life because I can kill him with that chokehold. So, but the subject giving you his back does not necessarily mean the entire back has to be facing you. This is giving the subject your back right there. In other words, at that 45-degree plane, as I start to see that coming around, I don't need to wait for complete rollover to apply neck restraint. As he's in this position right here, I can start applying the neck restraint right now, and I can get him to roll over the rest of the way and finish him as I need to finish him by myself. So we want to make sure that we're conscious that we never give the subject our back. This is the disadvantage of wrestlers in general that have only wrestled competitively and not wrestled for self-defense purposes, is they're used to rolling to their stomach to prevent from being pinned because it's a sport. And of course, in self-defense application, you roll to your stomach, you're in a real tight jam. So we don't want to have the guy give us his back. We talked about hooks into the legs. I want to show you, too, that we know that a lot of the techniques will be based on neck restraints, chokeholds, strangleholds, whatever you choose to call them. And we know that in police work these days, a lot of agencies don't allow these particular techniques to be used, which I think is a real disservice to the officer in general. But if that's the policy that we can't use neck restraints, then what we are going to try to do is use neck cranks and manipulate the neck joints, similar to doing an arm bar. Similar to doing an arm bar. Or a leg lock or a wrist lock or anything else. We're manipulating the joint, trying to use pain compliance as our efforts to subdue the subject. Notice I'll put Daniel, we'll do a short demo here. I'll put Daniel in a neck crank and start working on him. Let him go ahead, full speed and power, try to get up from the neck crank. And then we'll try the same type of technique with a neck restraint. Okay, Daniel, hang on just a second. Okay, I get Daniel in a good solid neck crank where I want him. This is a pretty good technique here. I got good grip on his chin. As I'm pulling up on his chin, I'm pushing down on the back of his forehead. Puts a lot of torque on his neck. So this is not a chokehold. I'm trying to control him now with the neck crank. Okay, ready? Go. There's your counter right there. So we know, we spoke about buying time and how important it is to try to be able to survive in these situations for as long as you can. It's like building blocks. We want to survive for a second, then 2 seconds, then 3 seconds. So we want to survive till either help arrives or that we have a opening that allows us to counter this individual and sufficiently subdue him for handcuffing. We see with the use and the application of a neck crank that I was able to buy a second, maybe at the most, before he already countered the technique. Let's try a neck restraint now, or a chokehold, and try the same type of setup here where I'll tell him to go, and let's see how much time we can buy now. Ready? Go. See, I'll just stay here all day long as Daniel continues to tap out, showing me that he can't breathe and he wants to quit right away. So, if you have to use neck cranks, please understand that you're at a distinct disadvantage over a neck restraint and that your ability to buy time is going to be diminished significantly. Okay, I want to show the 6 different positions that we're going to be working in today. The officer will be in the advantage position in 3 of those, and then the subject will be in the advantage position in the other 3. That gives us 6 different positions. And of course, we want to learn how to work effective offense as well as defense in all 6 of these positions. The first position we're going to talk about is the best one of all of them, is the mount position. In the mount position, the officer is on the torso of the subject. He's got his knees firmly planted on the ground. He's going to use his feet eventually to sink these hooks we talked about before, which gives him takes away the base of the subject. He also has his 2 hands in play here that he can do various things with his hands, which we'll show later, and working arm bars, chokeholds, striking techniques, all these things that can occur from the mount position. And this is called the mount. This is the best position you would want to be in a ground combative situation, and the last position you want to be in if you're the officer and you're on your back. The second position, here again is a position of advantage for the officer, is called the side mount position. There's a couple variations from this. One of the positions in the side mount, I got my arm up underneath his neck. I got a good solid base back here with my feet, and I'm wrapping up this other arm here. Notice that I'm sitting on this arm here to prevent any type of weapon takeaway. Another possibility on this would be this position here. Same type of idea, but when I go to this position, I'm going to vary my side mount. Still got a good solid base so I can't be ruled. I'm still in here tight, and this helps minimize there again gun takeaway that we don't want to have. And then thirdly, I can accomplish the same thing. Being in a side mount position, he can't reach for my gun. I'm controlling this arm, and I'm always controlling the neck. My body positioning is chest to chest, feet spread apart for good stability, and all my weight on top of the subject to make it difficult for him to breathe and also difficult for him to count. And then thirdly, position of advantage, and this might fool some of you, is when the subject's in what we call the guard position. Don't think because you're on your back, you're in a position of disadvantage. You're actually at a good position of advantage. I've got him in my guard. I restrict his movement that he can do in the guard position. I can either have an open guard, which is my feet unlocked, or I can have a closed guard position. From here, I can pull him down into me. I can push him back away. I can work the range that I need to work depending on what I'm trying to do simply by manipulating my legs back and forth. It also puts him out of range. He's going to attempt to counter that particular technique. When he does, he gives me targets of his body and different appendages, his arms, his head, that I can work effective techniques with. So this is also a position of advantage, and this is called the guard position. Now we're going to change it around, and we're going to show where the officer has a position of disadvantage, where the subject's in these same positions. For instance, the first one, the officer's on his back, bad position to be in, subject's in the mount position. This is not good for the officer, and we'll show why here in just a little bit. The side mount position, now the subject has a side mount, officer's in this position. Of course, from here, the subject's going to be attempting to mount. That's what we're going to try to do. And then thirdly, the officer is in the subject's guard. The officer is now in the subject guard. He can manipulate the officer now where he wants him to be, and that is not a good position for you to be in. Here again, all of these positions, there's positions of advantage and positions of a disadvantage. There are techniques that you can perfect in each one of these positions to give you the opportunity to buy a sufficient amount of time for survival out there on the street. We know there, too, that if we have to look at what we're trying to accomplish here. First off, we want to subdue the subject and handcuff the subject. That's our ultimate goal in police work. If I'm in a side mount position, my whole goal as the officer in this position is to go to the mount position because we know that's the best position of advantage. So I want to go to the mount. If Daniel was the police officer and I'm the bad guy, then Daniel's whole goal is to prevent me from going to the mount position. Okay? And you'll see this work later when we do our drills on how to perfect these different techniques, exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Same thing with the guard position. If I'm in the guard, my job is to try to get out of the guard, and we'll show different escapes from the guard position. And if Daniel's in the guard, his whole position is trying to get out of the guard, and my job is trying to keep him in the guard. Because I know if he breaks the guard, he's going to go to a side mount, into a mount position, and I'm in trouble. Okay, we want to look at striking techniques now from these 6 different positions. And we're going to work some drills later on in the video to show you how to perfect these striking techniques, but we want to look there again. We'll put the officer in the advantage position with a mount, the side mount, and have the subject in his guard, and look at the strikes that are available to us. First off, when the officer is in the mount, that's me, notice that mechanically, here through body mechanics, that regardless of this guy's size, and I was working with a 6'5" individual the other day, and he still can't reach my face, but watch what my fist does. So I go way past his face. That means continuous drive right through this guy's face, and he can't even reach me. In addition to that, I can extend my shoulders, which is proper punching technique, rotate my hips, which gives me a lot of power when I'm punching, and he not only can he not reach me, but he can't get full extension on the shoulders without giving me an arm bar, and he also has no hip movement, because I'll get into a good mount position that takes away his hip movement. So he has limited range of motion, in fact, ineffective range of motion, no extension of the shoulder, no rotation of the hip. So even if he could make contact, if he pulls me in here close enough to make contact, his power is going to be significantly diminished because he can't use the proper body mechanics of punching. On the other hand, I've got full range of motion, full power, I can do all this striking. In fact, what I'm trying to achieve here, which we'll show when we talk about our neck restraints, is after he takes this punishment for a little bit of time, he's going to roll over, he's given me his back, I'm going to sink the neck restraint here and subdue this subject rather quickly. Not only do I have the punches here, but I also have, by getting in close, I have elbow strikes. Significant amount of damage now occurring from these elbow strikes because we know when we stabilize a target and we strike it, it's going to hurt that target a lot more. His head is planted on the floor. When I smash him with one of these elbow strikes, there's no place for that energy to dissipate except inside of his face. That's not good for him. So there again, in a violent encounter, I can punch, I can elbow strike, I can headbutt, I can do a lot of things to this guy, and it allows me to be successful in subduing the subject and doing these strikes from the mount position because of the range of motion that I still have, just like if I was standing up. and he has no range of motion and has no proper body mechanics to apply to any of his strikes from that position. So we can do this from the mount position. From the side mount position, where the officer still has the position of advantage, we come in here, and as I'm getting ready to apply, or after the takedown has occurred, and I'm in the side mount position, first shot might be right here to the ribs. Hard knee strike right here to the ribs. As I'm coming down into my side mount position, I want to bury my elbow into his solar plexus. I'm going to hook his head here tightly. Softening up technique right here, perhaps. Softening up technique right here, perhaps. A reverse elbow strike right here to the side of the head, to the side of the neck. These are excellent softening up techniques. And just by these techniques alone, you may get the submission you're looking for and the ultimate control that you're attempting to achieve. So these strikes are always available to me. I can come in here, I can strike the groin on my way into a side mount. So I don't want to forget any of my strikes using my hands, my elbows, my knees, my headbutts are always in play for me here. There's no place that he can escape from any of these techniques because his body's on the ground. The third position of advantage, talking about strikes again, we're back to the subject being in the officer's guard. Here again, through control of his body with my legs, pushing him back, pulling him in, I can leave him at mid-range and develop some punches that I did not have in the mount, if you'll recall, but I do have them when I have him in my guard. I can punch him here, whatever targets of opportunity I have, I can give. I can stabilize the head, pull him in close, elbow strikes, headbutt. Notice that in this particular position of advantage, I don't lose my body mechanics like I did in the mount position. I can still work my shoulder extension into play, my headbutts. I'm not in such an isolated space as I was when I was in the when I was in the mount position. So this is a good striking area here. There again, using my legs to bring him into those areas. Now let's say you're at the position of disadvantage. The subject has the mount position. When the subject has the mount position, there again, he's going to be attempting to do these same strikes. One thing I can do is he's got to have a solid base. 2 knees, 2 hands on the ground gives him a solid base. When he goes to punch, he takes one of those legs of the table, if you will, off the floor. We know when you're missing a leg off a four-legged table, he's very unsturdy. So when he makes that punch, if I buck up, or what we call bridge, I can turn him in that direction and get him off of me and make a sufficient counter. So here's his choice. He can either punch me and get rolled, be a bad mistake for him, or when I buck, he'll replant his base and keep from being thrown. And what that does, it keeps me from getting punched. So both of those are effective for me. In addition, when I have him in here close like this, I also, by playing with his head and manipulating his head, I still, even though they won't have the same power they will if I was in this position, I'm still going to be able to land some softening up techniques that allow me to hopefully change this guy's thought process and allow me to counter the technique and come out from underneath this dangerous spot that I'm in right now, being in his mount. In the side mount position, when he has me in the side mount, same type of situation here. I've got eye gouges, nose, throat, all the different possibilities that I have for striking. I got a solid elbow right here to the side of his ribs that would be an effective technique. I got knee strikes to the side of here, throwing them with as hard power as I can to try to get him to reposition himself or to make a mistake. And I don't need a big mistake, just a little mistake, and I can reverse this roll real quick. So we're looking at hand strikes, gouges, shin pulls, punches, elbow strikes, knee strikes to try to change this position. And then thirdly, strikes from being in the subject's guard. Not a good place to be in. You saw before how I was able to pull Daniel down, push him back to put him in whatever range I wanted to do. He's going to be attempting to do the same thing. There again, we're going to try to counter some of those techniques. Now he can only pull me in this close. As he goes to punch me, there again, through sufficient blocks and trapping of the arm, I get into positions. When I stack him in position, I can elbow strike, punch, solar plexus, the groin, by shifting my weight back, solid strikes to the groin, whatever I need to do here. So we can still strike in all 6 positions and attempt to change if we're in a position of disadvantage, attempt to change those positions to a position of advantage to ultimately get to our position of control. We're going to move in now to looking at the 6 different positions and how we can apply chokeholds, neck restraints. I realize we've got to play a game of semantics on some of these things, but bottom line, they're all the same thing. They're strangleholds on the subject looking for submission. We know that some policies and procedures won't allow us to do chokeholds. We've already done the demo for you about neck cranks and their effectiveness, or I should say ineffectiveness. They do buy you a little bit of time, but very little. So if you're going to use a neck crank, be ready for your position to be challenged rather quickly by the subject. We're going to start off here in the mount position. The best position of advantage for the officer to be in is in this mount position that we spoke about before. There are several different chokes that I can accomplish from this position here, or neck restraints that I can accomplish from this position here. One of the first ones is a scissor neck restraint. In this particular chokehold, I try to sink one of my arms in here, whether it be the left arm or the right arm is irrelevant, but I sink it in here as deep as I can behind the subject's collar, behind his neck, and what that's doing already is it's starting to cut off the flow of oxygen to his brain by sealing that carotid artery there. To make it complete, I come underneath here, and I can either sink it through the inside of the collar, just like I did on this one, or I can simply reach back here and go deep, a good bite on the back of his shirt with my arm, and as I pull the scissors, that's why I call it a scissors choke, as I pull the scissors away, I push my elbows out, I lean forward to accomplish the choke. And it doesn't take very long time at all to get submission that you're looking for from that particular technique. So that's a good technique there. That's what we call the scissors choke. Good technique. Another possibility I can do from here is I have a forearm choke. We know that any time that we attack the windpipe, it's a life or death technique. In other words, it's a very high level of force on the use of on the continuum, and we know that when we attack that, it better be a life or death situation. But that may be simply the case here. We're in a tough, violent encounter with this subject, and there again, by simply using my forearm and coming down on the windpipe, and this is very difficult here to practice or to show because I don't want to hurt Daniel, but just a simple amount of pressure there is going to achieve what I want to do with sealing the oxygen flow there again from his windpipe to his brain, and that's all we're trying to do. So we're looking at the scissors choke. We got the forearm choke. We've got another one here where I can come under here and get him in a head vice like this, take my fist, put it on his throat in this manner right here. All I have to do now is simply reach up, grab my own wrist, and lean down on my fist. And I'm affecting that same type of chokehold, sealing off the windpipe so he can't breathe. Once again, it's arm around the neck, fist to his throat, grab my own hand, lean down, perfect the choke, right like that. And then next what we're looking for is probably the most simplest one of all of them, and that is to use our striking techniques. Remember, he can't reach me with his strikes, and I can continue to reach him with mine. And after he takes a few of these shots, he's going to do something very foolish. He's going to roll to his stomach. I'm going to allow him to do that, and then I'm going to come in here and sink a carotid neck restraint and finish him off rather quickly with the most standard of all neck restraints, and that's the carotid neck restraint. Understand that, in my opinion, the carotid neck restraint is a job functional technique as well as a life or death technique. In other words, if I continue to squeeze, it transitions itself from job functional to life or death. But anytime I attack the windpipe, it's not job functional. It's a life or death technique from its very onset. Those are the chokeholds that we're looking at now from the mouth. Scissors choke, fist to the throat, forearm to the throat, pummeling him in to get him to roll onto a stomach, and then go with our carotid neck restraint. Now we're going to look at some of the side mount positions where the officer is in a side mount. There's also some chokes there that we can use from a side mount position. One of the first techniques that all work will be that same type of technique where the fist goes into the throat. I reach up here and grab my arm, and simply by leaning forward and pulling down, I accomplish a choke. And it occurs very quickly, and it makes for a good choke. There again, notice that I'm attacking the windpipe. We've already talked about that as being a life or death technique. Certainly not job functional, but it will get the job done if you're justified in using that particular technique. Another neck restraint we can do here, and seizing off the breath again for him, is using that forearm. Same type of thing we did in the mount. Anytime I can do that, all I have to do is simply lean forward, and I start sealing the breath right there. It's also quite painful as a neck restraint, so I'm going to get compliance quickly on that particular technique. And then another one that we have, when I trap the arm up in this way, in my which is one of the positions we wanted to be in our side mount, I can use an old judo technique where we come in here, got his arm here, simply grabbing his own wrist, pulling his hand back underneath his neck towards my body at the same time that I pull his shoulder away. And get submission that way, in essence letting him choke himself out. So that's another one that we can use from a side mount position. Thirdly, in our position of advantage, where the officer has the subject in his guard, we look at the same type of choking opportunities that are available. First off, the scissors choke is there once again, simply by riding the collar all the way through and getting in this position, or it can be a modified position. Bottom line is, once I sink the choke, I'm going to use my legs, as we know I can do, to pull him down. At the same time, I'm pulling him down and opening my elbows to affect the choke. And go right into that front choke there. So it actually gives me a good position of advantage being in this position. Another thing I can do is there again, with attacking the throat, coming with the fist to the throat, arm around, and simply pull down and push and tighten and choke him in that particular position there. If he's made a mistake and he's allowed me to pass one of my legs up through the guard, I'll come into this figure 4 choke here around the neck. There again, all it is a reverse carotid chokehold using my leg. Also, as you can see, I can easily go into an arm bar too, but we'll do that in just a little bit. Okay, so we talked about the leg scissors, which would work good if I can get one of my legs from the guard. If he makes a mistake, I'm going to go with that leg scissors. We've got the scissors choke with our hands. We've got the fist to the throat grabbing our own arm. And then we also have a T-shirt type choke where I'm going to grab the T-shirt and I'm going to grab it tight. I'm going to push his head down and come right up underneath. And this arm here, cutting off the carotid there. T-shirts pull tight against the carotid there, and also a little bit of a windpipe chokehold there. Same thing with the other arm. I'm grabbing up here on top, manipulating the head, going right to the choke right here. And that's a good choke for you right there too. As long as the guy's wearing any type of shirt, I can perfect that movement. Head under, right to here. Sufficient choke. Okay, now we're going to look where the officer is in a position of disadvantage. I told you before, and I'll reiterate this throughout the video, that this is the worst position that you could be in. You're on your back, the subject's got a good solid mount position, not good. We're down, but we're not out in this position. We're going to continue to try to buy time. One of the things that we can perfect here or there again is the scissors choke. He's still got his neck in here. We can still come in here with the scissors choke and perfect that same technique that we had before. He also allows us to do a T-shirt choke where I come up here, manipulate his head through, and go right through the choke there. And if I can get him in close enough to me while he's trying to manipulate something on me, I can sink that fist up there, reach around, and go right for my wrist and perfect that choke there again. So all these chokes that are available for me when I had him in my guard, which is a position of advantage for me, are also available for me when I'm in a position of so-called disadvantage with him on top. So I always constantly want to be looking for the choke, and they're there for you if you just look. Another position of a disadvantage here is the side mount position. This is the position in here when he's in a normal side mount. He's got a good side mount. I'm always going to be working my hands up here close to his throat. There again, remember that part of our basics was to keep our hands in tight so that the guy can't perform an arm bar on us, or it exposes our neck and we're victims of a chokehold. So I'm going to be working my forearm here against his throat, trying to achieve some leverage, working against that windpipe. That's going to get me, hopefully, some relief and get him off of me. Another thing that I might be able to do in the side mount, if he's in a modified side mount position, which he's in right now, which a lot of takedowns will put you in this position, if I can manipulate his head back into a position to get a figure 4 on his neck, then I can choke him from this position right here. Okay, so it's a simple choke there again. Maybe by delivering some strikes here or in an effort to reposition himself, he makes that mistake of leaning back, and right away I go into that scissors choke with my legs across his neck. And then thirdly, a position of disadvantage. The officer now is in the subject's guard. Here again, he's going to be trying to do techniques on me. As he pulls me in here close and is working to try to maybe get arm bars, I've already sunk one of my scissor chokes right there. All I need to do now is to get the other one and then do the same thing I did before. I'll attempt to stack him by moving forward, spreading my elbows out, and second choke. So that's all I need to do in that particular position there. In addition, anytime I get into a position of stacking, I might be able to work the forearm choke like we wanted to do in that particular position. If I'm good enough to stack him well enough, I'll go to the fist choke, grab my arm, lean forward, choke him out in that particular manner. And then it's quite possible, depending on my positioning here inside the subject's guard, that I might even be able to affect the T-shirt choke once again. Grabbing the back of the T-shirt, rotating his head under, and choking him in this position here. And there's our positions there, a position of disadvantage. So you can see that even when we're in a position we'd rather not be in, there's ways there that we can buy time. We just got to be looking for them and practicing them so that they occur to us right away, and we can get the subject under control. Okay, and working these arm bars now, we're going to be in a good position here. We're in the best favorable position for the officer, position of advantage, being in the mount position. We've got a good solid base like always. This guy's not going to be, hopefully he doesn't know much about ground fighting and ground combatives, which will be to our advantage. What we're going to do on this first one, we're going to do a straight arm bar. Anytime he starts extending his arms out like that, or you start extending your arms like that, you're putting yourself in a position to have an arm bar placed on you like Daniel's doing right now. When I get in this position and I grab the arm, I want to grab it and pull it up. He wants to bring it to my face anyway, so I'm going to pull it up. As I do that, I'm going to rotate so his elbow, the pocket of his elbow, is pointing up towards the ceiling, and then I'm just going to come around, stand in close proximity into this arm bar right here. Notice that in this arm bar here, I've got about 8 inches now that I can pull down. As I'm pulling down, I'm pushing my hips up towards the ceiling, and I'm going to get submission here, or better yet, I'm going to get compliance real quick, because there's a tremendous amount of pain generated here on the elbow and the shoulder, and if he doesn't comply, I've got about 8 inches now that I can pull down, plus I can raise my hips about 8 inches. That elbow's going to snap, so he's going to comply for me simply by being in this particular arm bar here. So this is a good straight arm bar for you. Some other arm bars we can perfect here, and we can work that either side, left or right. But the other arm bars we have here is that maybe he's smart enough to not put his arms and extend them totally up. Instead, he's foolish enough to leave them down here close to the floor. When he does that and I see they're down there, I'm going to immediately trap that arm. Okay, now I'm using opposite hand here to come across. Opposite hand here, trapping his hands down. Notice that when I get a grip, I'm always fingers on one side, thumb on the other. I don't do this type of grip here. Pull your hand away. Terrible grip. I do this grip here. Pull your hand away. It's tough for him to break that grip there. So when I come across, I make that grip. I pin his hand down to the ground. This hand, my opposite hand comes under his arm and gets into this thing. Notice how I grab my own hand. Same type of thing. I've got a good solid grip. I want my elbow here to be close to his head for good support there and good leverage. I'm going to keep his hand on the floor as I lift my body up and drag that hand across. Getting good compliance right away. There's a tremendous amount of pain here. When I bend the wrist, I'm applying pain there. When I raise the elbow up, the range of motion for the elbow doesn't go that way. Tremendous amount of pain there. And all that creates a tremendous amount of torque on the shoulder joint. So there again, trapping it down quick, seating that figure 4 sharply, and keeping everything down close. Remember sticky man philosophy, standing close to the subject, and just raising up on that arm and getting compliance right there. Let's say that he's not going to give me an arm bar here, and he's keeping conscious of those arm bars out there, but he's reaching down here for whatever reason. I see those hands close to my body here, same thing. I trap it quickly down on the floor. I come across with my other hand in the same type of figure 4 grip that I had, and then now the same philosophy applies. I'm keeping this hand flush to the floor as I lift my body up. There again, a tremendous amount of pain on the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder joint. If this guy is extremely flexible and I can't get compliance, I can still, through the leverage, roll him over. He's in a great handcuffing position now, and if I still had resistance and I couldn't control him, he's very violent, I'm going to forget this arm bar and go right to a carotid restraint. And we know how effective that is. So those are our good arm bars there. We'll go back for a second. Let's say here again, he's flailing his arms up. We're going back to the straight arm technique stuff. I trap this hand in here close to my chest, a good grip. What I want to do when I grab it is I want that elbow now to be facing the ceiling. So I turn the elbow out, facing away from me. You see what it's already doing to his wrist. All I have to do now, push my chest forward as I pull his elbow back and go into a straight arm bar attack right there, attempting to get compliance from him right there. So that's called a reverse straight arm bar, applying pressure in this particular manner. If I want to make it a little more solid so I can be up in there, I can come up in here close and then accomplish the same thing. And notice I've got the wrist going back as the elbow's coming in here back towards me. And this is called a reverse straight arm bar. And it's a very sufficient technique also from the mount position. Okay, we're going to look at now the second position of advantage for the officer. We know the mount's the most advantageous position, side mount being the second position. From there, we're going to go to the mount, and then we'll do a subject in our guard here in just a second. When I've got the subject in a side mount position, there again, good solid base. Once again, I have several arm bars at my disposal. If this guy is moving his arms back and he ends up making that mistake there, I'm going to release this head, trap this arm just like we did before. Good solid grip right there, coming underneath the tricep to this figure four position. He's already starting to winch a little bit there. Good figure four position. It really puts his body under a tremendous amount of pain. All I got to do is keep that hand, his back of his hand on the floor as I lift my body up and get a tremendous, he's tapping me out over here, getting a tremendous amount of pain there. Same type of thing now. If we've got the arm floating around down here, down towards this part of my body, it's not back up there. Immediately I'm going to trap it down hard with a good grip. I'm going to bring this arm in behind this tricep, right again there to a good grip on my hand, and just start rolling back with him and get him in a good position here and either go for submission, or I'm in a good position now to start working my cupping from the prone position. And at the very least, he's flexible. I can't get submission here. I'm going to drop this arm bar and go into a neck restraint. And then lastly, from the side mount position, this guy has a habit of reaching across your back, whatever he's attempting to do there. Let him reach. The more he reaches, the better. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to come up. I'm going to trap his head with my knee right here against his head. Going with the arm bar, a reverse straight arm bar here, using my head here to trap his wrist against my neck. I'm pinching him right there with my head. Raise this leg up, staying in close, and now just raise up as I push his elbow towards my chest. And going for compliance right there. There again, you see the subject's also starting to give me his back. We know anytime he gives me his back, he's in trouble because he's opened himself up for neck restraint. So this is a good reverse arm bar there. I'm in the third advantageous position here. I have the subject in my guard. Here we're going to be looking for some arm bars. There again is what we're talking about. This guy makes a mistake. Maybe he's reaching in to try to get that scissors chokehold we talked about. As he reaches in and he puts himself out of position, I can slide this foot out at the same time I hook this head here and get him in a reverse straight arm bar there, giving him a good position. The other thing I can do is he's going to attempt to resist that perhaps by raising up to get out of the way. When he raises back this out of the way, I'll hook here and take him back the other side into that same straight arm bar we had before, allow me to get submission that way. Raise my hips, pull the arm down. Pull the arm down, raise my hips. We're working that knee joint right there, or that elbow joint right there. Okay, the other thing I can do when he's in my guard, there again, remember when he's in your guard, you kind of help control the distancing where you want him. I can trap this arm here again with a good tight grip, come over the top of the tricep, grab my arm again, we're back to that figure four lock now, and immediately shift my hips out and start reversing this position right here. Puts a tremendous amount of strain now on his wrist, his elbow, and his shoulder. And all I got to do is continue to work my body out and get compliance right there is what I'm looking for. And then another thing we have here from the arm bar, if he's leaning back, he's giving us a straight arm, we'll do a reverse straight arm bar. There again, what I can do here is I can trap the arm, start pushing in this direction here, and working the arm in this way here, eventually riding up to my forearm in this position here. So working the wrist and the straight arm bar, starting to change position here on him. He's in a bad position now. As he starts to counter and come up, then I'm going to move from this position into our neck restraint, or neck crank if that's what your policy says you have to use. We're in the worst position you can be in right here we talked about before. That's being in the subject's mount, but we're not finished. We're never going to be in a position where we can't buy some time. When we're in this position here, there again, if I can make a grab tightly on his hand, regardless of which hand it is, I can seat that figure four grip There again, just coming in here and grabbing his arm. Tremendous amount of pressure now as I push up with this hand here that's grabbing his wrist and pull down on the other side there, creating a tremendous amount of pressure. How long will I hold this technique? Until I get help or until another position allows me to completely reverse positions and get him under control. He's pretty much under control now, and I'll buy time until my backup arrives in this position right here. The other opportunity that I have in this position is I have the ability that we'll use that bridging and that bucking of the subject off of us like we showed when he attempts to strike. We'll do the same thing here, but this time we're going to grab the hand and buck him in the opposite direction of the hand we grabbed. So we're going to take him this position here and roll ourselves all the way out into an arm bar. This is a very effective arm bar. Allows me to go right into a wrist lock, finger locks, whatever I'm looking for here. All I have to do for compliance now is roll back in towards the subject. Tremendous amount of pressure on the elbow, the wrist, and the shoulder joint. Now you can see that some of these techniques take a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of conditioning. Your ability to defend yourself from the ground is just like it is standing up, is based a lot on your physical attributes. But a lot of these techniques, and most of these techniques, can be perfected even if you're not in great shape. We can still buy time just by getting these locks, and they're mainly, we're talking about leverage, center of gravity, and just proper body mechanics is going to overcome your inability to fight due to conditioning or your size. We're going to do officer in the side mount now. I need to let you know that when you're in a side mount position, although we have techniques we can do, we saw that we could choke effectively from that position, and we can reverse that position and prevent the subject from mounting us. We are extremely limited on our ability to do arm bars from that position. But we're not going to be down and out completely. As it gets us into a side mount position, I want to make sure that I got this hand between myself and him. That's going to protect me. So as he comes in for the side mount, my hand is already seated here. Let's say he's perfected a takedown, taking me to the ground. I place my arm here. That allows me now to come in with this arm, and at the same time as I'm pushing up here, I'm pulling down on his shoulder and I'm throwing my hips out, which is one of the techniques we want to do anyway for reversing this particular position. And as I reverse the position quickly there, I come right up in here, I lock his leg back here, and I pull myself up using his body with the chicken wing, never releasing anything that I have, using this leverage here with this shoulder joint and the arm. Okay, and that's a good reversal position for us when we're in the side mount. When the subject's got me in a closed guard like he does now, here again, one of the techniques I want to use is I'm going to use that technique of stacking, which is moving up into here to try to limit his ability to use too much offense for me. And what I can do, as you can see, is his arms are going to get in position for arm bars. For instance, here we go for that figure 4 arm bar, trapping this hand down, reaching underneath the tricep. And same thing, keep the hand down on the floor as we pull everything back towards us. Okay? And then if the hand's down by his side or he's reaching around behind me, trapping this hand, going over the top, grabbing it again here, and now pulling everything back this way, reversing that position. It's all through leverage. I'm using about 35% of strength and power in this stuff. It's all through leverage. So if you wanted to apply 100%, you're going to put a tremendous amount of torque on the joints right away. You get better compliance right away. Okay, we want to look again at escaping the guard. We know that this is a position of advantage, although if you came upon this scene, you'd certainly make it look like the guy on the bottom is at a position of disadvantage. We know that's incorrect. I'm in his guard. He's at the position of advantage. So what we want to try to do is get out of this guard position that he's in to go to the side mount, then to the position that we have most control and most techniques available to us, and that's in the mount position. A couple ways I can do that. If I'm a larger person than the subject that I'm dealing with, I can do what we call stacking. Stacking, simply coming in here and moving my legs all the way up, making this extremely uncomfortable for this guy. Another thing that stacking does is, as a human body, Daniel's very strong. Push your legs, very strong with his legs in that position, kind of like, if you will, a squatting position or a leg press position when you're working out. He's got a lot of power there. Push again, a lot of power. When we stack those legs all the way up against him and take his range of motion away, push, we take away a lot of his ability to push because we've jammed, if you will, the range of motion. Range of motion and strength starts about right here and starts to diminish as we bring this back to his body. So that's what we're going to try to do in the stack. Once again, I'm in this position position here, and I bring his legs as close to him out of position as I can. Still allows me to do any of the arm bars that we talked about before, and this is one way that we're going to start making being in his guard very uncomfortable for him, and make him want to release that position for us. Another thing we can do when we're in the guard to get out is we can take our elbows, put them inside here. We know we got the common peroneal nerve and the femoral nerves running on both sides of the thighs. We're going to use those pressure point areas to our benefit. Take our elbows in here, place them inside the thighs, and just push them real hard and get good compliance there. This allows me now, when I'm in this position, to either totally disengage if that's what I want to do. I don't suggest that because you have to take this guy down to the ground perhaps a second time and you're in an even worse position. So after we get this position here, I'll get one leg over to a leg straddle to this position here. Now it's very close for me now to continue my mount or work offense from this particular position here. So I can be in a partial mount position and still affect a lot of the same techniques we've already worked on. So that's using our elbows inside the thighs to push him away. We can do that. Another technique we can do is what we call passing the guard. I can come under here when he's in an open guard especially, slip my arms in and move this leg over my head right to a side mount into the mount position. Here, that's the good news. Bad news is this puts him in a good position, which we'll show in a second, for a choke hold in this position or to set him up for an arm bar. So if I'm going to use that passing of the guard, I need to be conscious of those two techniques he can do from there. Choke holds with his leg he can do, and he can also push my body back, which extends my arms and gets me in an arm bar. So when I pass this guard, I've got to be quick and conscious of the disadvantage of passing the guard past my neck, which is a very susceptible area there to be countered against. All right, once again, we don't want to forget any of our striking techniques. Our striking techniques are also going to allow us to escape the guard. Perfect shot here to the groin. I'm going to get his attention there. Hit him repeatedly here. Allows him to loosen up his tight grip on the guard. From that position, I might go back to that straddle to a partial mount. Puts me in a good position of advantage. Another thing I can do, here again, this is simply using good body mechanics. I can take my leg, right leg or left leg, doesn't matter. I'm going to ram that knee right up into his tailbone and through a position of leverage, just pushing myself away, and then, of course, coming right back. I don't want total disengagement because this guy's going to get up and I have to fight again. So I'll pull myself away to escape the guard, and then I'm coming right back in here. Now, he's made a real bad mistake here. As you can see, he's given me his back. We talked about like that. If he would have rolled there, he's in better shape for himself. But since he's the bad guy, we like him being in that position. And we're going to go right to a neck restraint from that side mount position to that partial mount position that we just showed. So these are all the ways that we can escape the guard. And this is a position of advantage for him, a position of disadvantage for you, but it doesn't take you out of the fight. And actually, there are some things here that you can do that work rather well for you. Now we have the officer with the subject in his guard. Position of advantage is here. Don't think because you're on your back you're in a bad position. You actually have a good position of advantage. The subject's inside my guard. There's several things we talked about before, just to reiterate about the guard position. I have a closed guard there with my legs. I like a closed guard compared to an open guard. I don't have a lot of control here. I've got a tremendous amount of control there. I can pull this guy into elbow range so my strikes are effective. I can push him back and get some extension of my shoulder, some hip rotation, and have a good punch. Notice I couldn't do that when he was mounted me, so this is a good position for me. So all my strikes are available. I pull my legs in as I bring my body up. Good headbutt. You got two forces meeting my head against the soft tissue of his face. Going to create a lot of pain there and do a lot of damage for him. If I break his nose, do something good like that, that blood flowing back into his mouth makes it difficult for him to breathe, difficult for him to fight. And these are all, once again, I can't reiterate that these are violent encounter resolution skills. This is fairly high up on the use of continuum, and that's because this is a violent encounter, and if we don't do something right away, this guy's going to either send us to the hospital or to the morgue. Another thing that we can do from here besides our strikes, we know that we have the different chokes that were effective that we showed earlier. Those are important things that we can do. We've got the arm bars that we perfected before, all the different things that we're able to do here. But there are a couple other things that we can do that we didn't talk about previously. One is this guy may attempt to stack us. We knew that's something we want to do. When he does that, we're going to want to push our legs back, trap his heels in this position, and just push. And go right from this position into an ankle lock here, just grabbing underneath the ankle, and just going straight back as I pull up. Looking for submission there. Puts a lot of strain on the ankle right there and on the tips of his toes. Once again, I just lean straight back. I keep that foot tucked up underneath my armpit, and this forearm pushes up on his ankle, just above his ankle, and get submission that way, or get compliance that way. So that's one technique we can do from there. Another thing we can do when a subject tries to stack us, and here again, it takes a little bit of fitness level to do this. A lot of you have that, so we'll cover this for you. Is when he tries to stack me, I do the same thing, but now I just roll completely through, and I'm in a mount position here. So I can counter that technique using his momentum of going back to pull me over on top, and now he's in the bad position here, and I'm in the major position of advantage. Okay, and we can use our legs in a couple of these techniques here when we have the subject in our guard. If he reaches across, he's attempting some type of choke, crisscross choke, or whatever it happens to be. Immediately we come up and we pull on this position, getting in this position here, crisscross our legs, pull his arm and squeeze right here, taking him into a good neck restraint by using our legs in the scissors, which is a good technique. The reason we're able to use our legs and pass this arm sufficiently is because we know the legs are stronger than the arms. He's also out of position here. He's got a choice: continue to struggle to maintain base, which is a mistake for him because he's leaving himself open for a neck restraint, or to go ahead with whatever technique he was working, assuming I don't know what I'm doing, and then that allows me to go to this position and just crisscross my legs there, squeeze down as I'm pulling here, and go for that neck restraint right there. Also from this position here, if I wanted to, I could continue to rotate this way. Take the leg back over this way, and now we're back to that straight arm bar we did earlier. Got about 8-inch space here. Pull the hand down towards my chest, all 8 inches, as I push my hips up on his elbow, and go right into that compliance technique right there. Okay, we got 3 rolls that we're going to do now that allows us to counter the position that the subject has us in. One that we'll do is the subject will be on the mount. He'll be on top of me. Another one is I'll have the subject in my guard. And the third one we'll do while standing, which takes us to the ground fighting position. On this first one, when the subject has me in the mount, I'm in this position here. I want to make sure he doesn't get leg hooks in. That takes us, really hurts me on this technique. So I got to be the first to work here. I'm trapping this foot on this side. I'm trapping this arm right here. All I have to do now is push and roll into the direction that I want to be in. I've got a pretty good arm bar right here, pulling up, pushing down on his body. And at the same time, of course, he's going to go to get me in the guard. And we know what all of our defenses there are for the guard. There's the groin. Here's the throat. There's a lot of different things that we could perfect now from that. So that's one rollover we can do from the mount. Another rollover we can do when I have the subject in my guard. It's the same type of principle here. We want to immediately hook the leg, or hook the arm, trap the leg, and roll into that position. Notice now how this one takes me to the mount position, which is my position of advantage. I've got a pretty good arm bar here, just on simple cranks there. Okay, and then also allows me now to go to all those other techniques we talked about, using different types of techniques and so on and so forth. So those are good roll-throughs. The third roll-through I want to show you occurs from the standing position. This is a ground combatives video, but most of the time, or all the time, there's going to be a takedown that put us into those positions on the ground, unless we happen to trip or something like that and the subject jumps on top of us. But one of the most common takedowns for the bad guy might be coming in here for this double leg takedown. Immediately when I see that takedown coming, I'm going to sprawl, going into this position here. I got my left arm across his head. Going to trap his hand and head together. Going to put my arm right here. We know if we stay above the elbow, that's a good pivot point for us to give us good leverage. And I'm just going to roll through. That takes him into a real bad position. It allows me to do a chokehold using his own arm to choke him. Got a lot of vital signs here that are available. Now I've got good control over this guy simply with one arm, which I'd never do, by the way. I'm always going to use 2-arm control. Once again, he shoots into that double leg takedown. I make the grabs right here and simply roll through. And right back into this position right here. I want you to understand that all these things that we're showing today deal with a workout training, perfecting our technique, developing our muscle memory. Unfortunately, we are excluding the real violence that occurs out there on the street. So although these techniques are occurring and kind of flowing one right after the other, you know as well as I do out there on the street that's going to be very quick, very violent. It's going to happen right now. It's not going to be pretty and like it is here in the gym. So you have to prepare yourselves for that violence and that aggressiveness. Okay, we're going to be talking about edged weapons defense now from the 6 different positions where a subject brings out a knife. Throughout this entire tape, I've tried to mention, and I'll reiterate here again, that this is violent encounter resolution skills. Notice the key word here is violent encounter. These are not passive subjects. If they were, we would use more passive techniques on a passive subject. These are aggressive subjects. They're serious about sending us to the morgue or sending us to the hospital. We can't let that happen. So we have to have skills. We have to possess the skills and the knowledge to be able to overcome this particular violence. And oftentimes we have to meet aggression with aggression. We're going to be talking about edged weapons now. Very serious confrontation here. The subject presents an edged weapon. I need to tell you right away that when I see the edged weapon come out, I forget about my ground combatives and I go to something more important now, and that is controlling the edged weapon hand. So as soon as he produces a weapon, any skills or any techniques that I want to perfect prior to being armed, I'm going to forget about. Once I see the edged weapon get pulled out and he now changes the entire situation here and ups the violence, I'm going to forget about any type of combatives and go strictly for control. When I can control and get maybe this weapon out of his hand, then I'm free at that time to go back to my ground combatives. Having said that, there are certain techniques and body positioning skills that we can possess that will help us in this position. First off, we'll start in the mount position. The officer's in the mount. Subject has a knife. I want to show you the difference in strength with a subject in what I call the prep phase. Maybe he's just pulling this knife out from behind him, and he's in what I call the prep phase. In the prep phase, he's very weak. Go ahead, lift up, Daniel. Very little bit of strength from my part. He's trying pretty hard to get his arm up. He cannot move his arm up. That's what I call the prep phase of a knife attack. In that prep phase, if I was to see that and recognize right away what he's doing, and I could trap that hand, I'm free to go with some of these armbar techniques that we already dealt with. But if he's already gone into the attack phase, and I go to one-hand control, go ahead, Daniel, push. I'm going to lose that game real quick. Go ahead, Daniel, push. I'm going to lose that game. I'm putting a lot of effort there to keep him from stabbing me, and I'm not being very successful. So in the prep phase, I can stop that. Push hard. He can't go anywhere. I'm using about 30% of my strength. Here I'm using about 100% push, and I'm getting ready to lose that battle. That edge weapon's getting closer and closer. So if I recognize that the weapon is coming out, I can get it in the prep phase. Or he's back here like this, and I can get him in the prep phase. Push up. I can control him real quick here with one hand. If he's past the prep phase and he's gone into attack phase, I want two-hand control all the time. Two-hand control. And from this position here, my whole focus now is protecting myself from the knife attack. So that's our strength differences here. Prep phase, we can do one-hand control for quick to keep him from the attack phase. Once he's in the attack phase, forget one-hand control, go to two-hand control. I like to use what I call an alligator grip. It's a death grip high up on the guy's wrist, right here, squeezing very hard. It's, if you've ever seen an alligator on any of the documentaries or anything, you'll notice once they grab onto something and they continue to roll, they don't let go, and that's what we're talking about here. We're going to get an alligator grip on this, a death grip, and hold on. And from this position here now, I'm taking away one of his weapons, his total focus on using this knife. He can punch me, scratch me, do whatever he wants to do to me, but I'm not releasing the two-hand control I have here. The only time I do that, if I was fortunate enough by using an environmental weapon, striking him against the floor and it dislodges that knife, then maybe at that time I'm going to come up, and from here now, I'll go back to my one-hand control techniques, whatever it is I'm going to be using. But as long as he's controlling the knife and has it in his hand,
I keep this alligator death grip on him all the time. Some of the techniques that I can do from here now is I can start, because he doesn't have the same balance that he has when he has both hands free, I can maybe bring this hand over here, riding his bicep against his own throat there, using notice I still got a grip here, using my forearm to push down on him right there, making it real uncomfortable for him. I can get my hooks into his legs back here and start stretching him out here again through body mechanics, attempting to make things very uncomfortable for him. The one thing that I won't do, and you'll hear me reiterate this throughout this portion of the video, is I'm not going to release my two-hand grip on the edged weapon hand unless I've dislodged that knife or that wet cutting instrument from his hand. Once again, as I showed earlier, we could use an environmental weapon. I can use all my weight and power to slam his hand down against the cement or wherever we're operating and maybe dislodge that knife that way. And then I'm back if I want to be. I can be into one-hand control techniques now, attempting to perfect my chokeholds, my arm bars, or whatever it is I wanted to do. Okay, I've got the two-hand control techniques here. I'm in the mount position. He's trying to stab me here. So I'm going to resist that, and then at the very last second, I'm going to start from my armbar move. Here again, he's in perfect shape for a good armbar. I may go ahead and let some of that pressure come up as I go back into this position here, bringing this 8-inch gap. So his hand touches my chest, my hips push up, achieving that particular move right there. So all our armbar, our straight armbar works in that particular positioning there. From a side mount position here, there again, I'm in a side mount. I notice all of a sudden the subject bringing a knife out from behind his waistband. Here, if I can trap it here, he's in a prep position. Push up, Daniel. Push up, Daniel. He's in a prep position here. So that allows me, when he's in that position, to go ahead and work some of these figure 4 arm bars that we talked about before. If, however, I'm in the side mount and he's already up in attack posture, I've got to make that block and come in here with two-hand control techniques. There again, what I can do from here now, without releasing my grip, is I can work my body up into here, getting him to some type of figure 4 position here, trapping the arm, maybe choking him out, whatever I have to do there to protect myself against that knife. If I come to the other direction, I can come in here, start delivering powerful knee drive, knee spikes into his ribs, into his groin, forearms into the face, smashes into here, smash back into there, whatever I need to do, but I'm not going to let go of the edge weapon hand. Subject's in the guard now. Here again, I see him coming out with a knife. I can stop him here. That's a prep position. Move, Daniel. Bring towards me. Doesn't require a lot of strength of me, a lot of strength on him to try to move it. He can't. I can go into a one-hand figure 4 technique here and get submission here that I'm looking for. If, however, I have missed that prep position, he's there, I'm not doing push down. I'm not doing one-hand control. I'm going to lose that fight right there. So I'm going to come up here and do two-hand control techniques. He wants to push down, so I'm going to let him push. I'm going to push my legs out, move my hips. Notice that my foot will come down here and at the same time push his leg back as I attempt to extend his arm. He's pushing in that direction, taking down in that direction, coming right back here using my forearm to come down to this arm bar right there. Push down here, pick up there into an arm bar. The other thing I can do from that position, here again, I've got him in this position here, he's in my guard, is he doesn't have a good base there again. I can come down here trapped in the outside of his shoulder and bucking and pulling him in this direction here. This puts me now back into the mount position. I also have him now in this prep position. Push up, Daniel. Makes him very weak. I could probably come under here and affect some type of arm bar from that position there. Don't forget, prep position. He's weak, lift up. Attack position, he's strong, push. Takes a tremendous amount of power for me to resist that. Plus, he can just pull out and redirect the knife attack. I'm in trouble. Can't do that here. Pull out. I'm not going to let him go. Got a death alligator grip here. I'm going to control that knife hand. Okay, this is a very tough situation here because my vision is limited. He's in a side mount. He might have armed himself back here, bringing something back. Anytime I see that movement there, I've got to be able to recognize these danger cues. And when I see movement like that, I have to suspect that he's bringing some type of weapon into play. And immediately I'm going to check that arm. I'm right. He's got an edged weapon in play there. Two-hand death grip like we've always talked about. Here again, I can throw my hips out
pushing his body away, keeping that death grip on, what we call alligator roll, and without moving that arm in any position, I can come up here and get this arm bar, finishing it off right to here. Okay? It's all based on that alligator grip. I don't want to let go of that at any time. Come in this position here, I see the knife coming up. I make that same movement I just did. Going to keep this death grip on, throw my hips out, rotate the body, and go right in here into these positions here. So if I keep the alligator grip on and don't move it, and just continue to move, my entire weight is manipulating his arm. And of course, being heavier than just his arm, we're always going to be able to survive the encounter and buy a sufficient amount of time there by putting a lot of pain on his particular joint as we roll through these different techniques with that alligator grip. Same thing here, the officer's in the subject's guard. He's at the position of advantage. The officer's at the position of disadvantage. If I see him bring this knife out from the waistband, there again, I don't need to tell you that this is a prep position. He's weak in this position. One-hand control techniques can work. What I mean by that is I can isolate the knife hand with one hand and come in here and attempt an arm bar or a different technique by controlling his knife hand with one hand. If he's in the attack position, I'm never going to do that. I'm going to come in here two-hand control. There again, I'm going to use my ability to stack and rotate his body, keeping that edge weapon out of my way, and in essence trying to use environmental weapons, the use of the floor or the street in this particular setup. Come down here, rest my forearm on his face, and try to get some type of compliance through a combination of a chokehold across the windpipe and then an arm bar and a wrist lock pushing down on the floor to get that knife out of his hand. Once it's clear and free of me, I can go back into my regular techniques because now I'm not worried about the edge weapon. Another thing I might be able to do, come in here, isolate the attack again. All I have to do is rotate my body there again, and then by rotating the body and going in different directions now, I start getting his body out of position, and I can do different types of wrist locks and arm bars from this position here. Okay, so it's rotation of the body, maintaining a tight grip around the wrist is what's important here. Now we've got to remember that we're going to use our entire body here as a weapon, which is what we ought to be doing and protecting ourselves anyway. So when I'm trying to isolate this attack, I'm going to make sure that I've got any knee strikes that I can effect. If I can isolate this hand out of the way, I might do a diving headbutt right there, knee strikes here, into the groin, whatever I can do. And there's a good distinct possibility that some of you might be asking now, okay, well, I'm isolating this hand comes up to take the knife, and now I've got a real problem. Here's what happens there. When I'm in here and I see the other hand coming in play, as that hand gets in there and makes that connection, I'm immediately shifting my two-hand control. There's some delay here now as he makes that switch with the knife as I immediately go to two-hand control. We're not saying this is a perfect world. It might come in here where he comes in there, and that's my initial positioning, but that's going to buy me a half a second of time or less, which is all I need. And now I come back to two-hand control, alligator death grip. Okay, so that switching of hands is a distinct possibility. We've got to make sure he can do a fake, come up, and he doesn't release. He comes up, fakes, I commit myself, I'm in trouble. So for that split second there, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to play both hands, and when I see what's going to happen there, then I'm going to make my adjustment to two-hand control. Okay, next thing we're going to cover is weapon retention from our 6 different positions, our 3 positions at advantage and our 3 positions at disadvantage. Once again, just like an edge weapon defense, the priority here once a subject grabs my gun is weapon retention. The ground combatives is secondary. The primary focus now is on retaining my weapon. Once I've retained my weapon and I've broken this subject's hands free of my gun, that's both hands free of my gun, then I'm free to go back to ground combatives. So we have to understand the priorities here. I'm going to go ahead and work with just a wooden gun here on my side. Here later on in the video, we'll have an officer suited up to show you the real firearm in play, as well as what it's like to work with his vest on, his radio, OC spray, and all the different things he has to be concerned about when he's involved in ground combatives. First position, of course, the officer's in the mount. I always have to be conscious when I'm in these positions that I have a sidearm on, that the subject being in this position or any other position on the ground, it's a violent encounter. The chances of him attempting to take my weapon are very, very high, and I have to be conscious of that. Fortunately, in this day and age, we have some good security holsters out there that are going to help us retain our weapon. We have to remember, too, in this weapon retention and ground combatives, we're always talking two-hand control techniques. Two-hand control technique for me on my pistol is strong hand is going to be pushing down, pushing the gun in its holster with my finger straight away from me. The support hand is coming across, resting on top of my strong hand, and both hands are pushing my weapon back into its holster. He's trying to pull it out. I'm trying to push it back in its holster and letting the security rig do its job. Another thing that we have to be conscious of is we can work in here. If I'm working against Daniel, I'm in a good mount position. I want to be conscious that he could take my weapon. I want to keep an elbow close to that gun so that when he starts to move towards the weapon, I've always got a block system already in place to get him off my gun. So anytime I can keep him from ever grabbing it, I'm going to do that. But we're going to talk about worst case scenario here. Let's say he does grab it. He comes in, he takes the pistol. I'm trapping the hands down like I always do. I'm always going to squeeze his hands and push down on his hand and then violently and aggressively move my body in the opposite direction that his wrist doesn't go. So I'm turning violently in this position here, trying to break that grip off of my gun. You see it now already starting to peel away. So that's what I'm attempting to do. Here again, because I'm not concerned anymore with ground combatives, I'm concerned with weapon retention. When I get that hand in that position there, you're talking about total disengagement here. Total disengagement. And we'll come back and deal with the problem after I've freed my gun. And now I know he's upped the ante a little bit, made it even more of a violent situation. We may be into a deadly force application now because he's attempted to take my weapon. Once again, if he reaches across, we know that when one hand comes, the other hand's going to come. If he comes across with this hand first, there again, we're going to trap it down, squeeze hard, push my gun back in the holster, and now I can use my forearm on the back of his elbow. There again, pushing, going right in, breaking the hand free of my weapon. The one thing that I'm not going to do here is take one of my hands off my gun. There's a lot of schools out there and a lot of instruction that's saying trap your gun in its holster with one hand, use your free hand to deliver some type of radial nerve strikes to the arm. You're going to get killed if you use those techniques. The priority here is not offense, it's defense. Trap your gun into its holster with both your hands. Obviously, he's going to be coming over here with both his hands to get it out. I'm pushing down violently, and in this position here, anytime I have a cross-arm position like that, I can rotate my body, and through proper body mechanics, break his hands free of my gun. Okay, it's real important here now, because we have the firearm present, that when we go into the side mount position here, if I can, I've done the takedown, I've gotten him on the ground, and I've got him in the side mount, ready to get him in the side mount position. I want to try to trap that hand with my body as best I can. That prohibits this right here from happening, him attempting to take my gun. So I want to try to trap that hand any way I can. It may be some type of trap of this nature, and I'm going to hold that in there so that he can't get my weapon. Let's say, however, though, that hasn't occurred. I came in here for the side mount, I screwed up, I feel the tug on my pistol. Immediately, two-hand control techniques, be conscious, keeping my head down, sticky man philosophy here applies, standing close to the subject, pushing my gun back in its holster, and once again, I'm going to roll in the direction that his wrist doesn't go. His wrist doesn't go that way. You see his hand peeling off right away. I'm using my entire body weight now to roll in the direction his wrist doesn't go. His wrist goes this way. It doesn't go this way very well. Another thing I can do is I can be in a modified side mount position, and when he reaches for my gun there again, I can come into here and go to this arm bar. Okay? If I catch him at the prep time, go to the arm bar. If I catch him, if I'm in the side mount, he goes for my pistol. Two-hand control techniques, pushing it down. And here again, I can possibly rotate and go into this arm bar right here. Okay? So that's what I want to do. And then thirdly, if I have failed to trap the arm properly, another thing that I might be able to do in this position is lay on my gun. Move my body onto my gun, which puts his hand out of position to take my weapon. Understand, I'm not in a good base here. I'm not really concerned about that at this moment, only because my priority here has shifted from ground combatives to weapon retention. Once I've retained my gun, then I'm going to move into proper ground combatives. Okay, the officer has the subject in the guard now. Here again, elbows in close to his weapon to protect it, conscious of what things can happen. I can still affect some of my chokes, do different things up here by working and bringing the body in close to me. When the subject reaches for my pistol, there again, both hands on, it's a death grip there. Very tight, pushing the gun back into its holster, rotating my body out to the direction of my pistol, turning my hips, and attempting there again to free his grip off of my gun. And once that has been accomplished, I can either go back to offense now or do total disengagement. But the bottom line is, both hands have to stay on my gun. If he comes in here and he reaches in a cross grip, same type of setup applies. Muscle memory puts my hands in the exact same position. Here again, I'm going to rotate my hips out of the way and violently get his body out of the way, laying on my gun, laying on his hands, and laying on my hands, which breaks the grip from the pistol. Okay, now the officer's at a distinct disadvantage here because the subject's in the mount. Here again, the subject makes a move for the pistol. I'm locking it in. Notice now that when the subject locks it in, he kind of takes away one of those table legs of his base. I can buck and go in the direction that he's going already and try to break that wrist right there as he's coming off there. Rotate back this way. That breaks that gun loose. Or I can take him in the same direction like we did before in our edge weapon defense. Here again, I trap the arm, a tremendous amount of power in bucking and turning my body, and trying to reverse that position and get him off my gun. There again, using his body weight to help peel him off my weapon. Last thing I'm going to do, both hands coming off the gun. The hands are going to stay on the gun the entire time. Any part of his hands are on my pistol. Another thing I can do here is as he reaches across and I pin his hands down in here, is I can buck him off again. This puts a lot of torque on his wrist and his elbow. Taking him in this position here, it immediately breaks the grip, and I may be in position here to come up into some type of arm bar or leg lock or whatever it is I need to do to get him right for handcuffing. The officer's in a position of disadvantage here. The subject's in the side mount. Here again, my weapon's in play. Most of the time, we've talked about moving our hips out of the way to work our position into a counter here. Notice now that in this position, when he reaches for my gun, immediate two-hand control here again, it's a good possibility I'm going to rotate my hips this way to lay on my gun as an option, or we can trap those hands like we've been doing and violently turn back in towards the subject and working against that wrist, using our feet to come into positions, breaking that grip right there where we want to go. Your hand strength here, or your ability to cling on with two hands is critical there again, because any type of slipping as he rotates his hand inside my hand takes away some of the leverage that I have. So once again, when I grab, I don't allow any rotation in there of the hand. I've got him pretty tight and secure, and I'm not going to let that go away from me. So once again, if I didn't possess the ability to rotate and kick my hips out in this particular fashion, which we'll do in a second, then by simply lying on my gun, I may buy a sufficient amount of time with all my hips and weight on my gun to keep my weapon retained, which is the priority here. If I do possess the strength and power to become offensive, then I'm going to do just that. I'm going to trap his hands in there and rotate and kick my body out the other way and eventually try to get into some position this way. Oftentimes when we talk about ground combatives and we show them in a series and sections of how they're occurring, I don't want you to forget that throughout all these ground combatives, we are striking, elbowing, kneeing, punching, whatever we can do to help buy time, to help soften up the subject so that we can get him into a position of compliance. So although you may see me doing a technique and not necessarily softening the subject up prior to that technique, please don't forget that in all these encounters we would be using our entire body as a weapon. Okay, and lastly, where am I in your guard? Okay, now I'm in the subject's guard. He's at the position of advantage. I'm in a position of a disadvantage. There again, as he comes up to grab the weapon, I immediately lock it in like I always do. The position of his wrist naturally folds this way. If that's the case, I want to take it opposite direction. I come up and turn violently into his wrist, breaking the grip, coming off my gun. It's all a matter of body mechanics. If you're strong, you can just do a technique that much easier, but it's really body mechanics, it's not strength. Same thing here again, we trap it down. We see that the elbow's in a good position to apply pressure, leaning forward, applying pressure on that arm, simply breaking his hand away. Understand, my whole goal in these weapon retention drills is to retain my weapon. Please retain your weapon. 2 hands on your gun will retain your weapon. 1 hand on your gun may be a fatal mistake. Okay, just as we're assuming here the officers are the only one with the firearm, we know that's not a good assumption. So we're going to show what can happen here where the officer's in position. In this particular case, I'm in the mount position, which is position of advantage for me. I've done my job well. Now all of a sudden the subject produces a firearm. Immediately when I see the firearm coming out, it's the same thing as we do with our edge weapon defense. We're talking about 2-hand control techniques. I really have to be careful now of any of this motion of the muzzle coming back towards my face. So I have an extra responsibility now of keeping myself down low, paying attention not only where the firearm is. This is not an edge weapon anymore, but paying more importantly attention where the muzzle is. So in other words, he could have the firearm there and the muzzle's pointing back to me. He gets his thumb inside the trigger guard and pulls the trigger. I'm in bad shape. So there again, I want to know where the muzzle is. I can help isolate the positioning of that muzzle simply by coming up a little bit higher with my death grip on his wrist. Notice how I've put my thumb in the palm of his hand against the base of the meat of his thumb there. Crisscross my thumbs, now rotate the gun in. Makes it very difficult here again, not through strength, but through just leverage. Leverage is a good thing for us. And so as he starts to rotate that muzzle in, I'm in a good position here. My sole focus here is don't let this guy point that muzzle back to me. Okay? If I've made a position, I've come in here and I've isolated and I've ended up in this position. I'm going to attempt to use the squeezing and that alligator death grip again to squeeze hard against the trigger guard. If his finger's in the trigger, maybe perhaps through the rotation and manipulation of his hand, I can cause a lot of pain on his trigger finger there, possibly even snap and break his trigger finger. Makes it very uncomfortable for him, buys me a lot more time. We run the same problem here that we had initially on the fact that he can switch hands. I'm in here tight. He comes over to the other hand. I've got to play the gamble there of what he's going to do because he could easily fake me out. Come in here and I'll make the shift, and now I'm in trouble. So when he does that, he comes over. I'll play them both. When he's made his decision on what he's going to do, I'm 2-hand control. My eyes are on the muzzle of the weapon. The muzzle of the weapon. Just like with the edge weapon defense, this guy may pull the gun from a waistband. As he pulls it out, he's in a prep position now. I don't have the same, I have the same priorities of his strength level, but I've got to make sure muzzle's away from me. I've constantly got to be controlled. Now, I can help control the muzzle of that weapon here by dropping my forearm down and keeping that gun away from me by simply doing that. So a good tight grip here is going to help us out when he's in the prep attack position. Always when he's in the attack position, it's 2-hand control, eyes on the muzzle. Notice how I drop my center of gravity anytime this stuff is going on to use that sticky man philosophy to stay in here close to the subject. I don't want to be up high. I want to be down here and low where I can watch the muzzle. Any strikes he's doing to me, any scratching, any biting, anything else he's doing is all second nature. Thank God with the adrenaline that I'm going to have pumping through my body, I'm not going to feel any of that stuff anyway. My adrenaline's all going to be focused into my hands to control that weapon from shooting. We eventually have to face reality and realize that we're not going to be out there in the street working our job, working the road with sweat clothes on, with PT gear on. So we have Daniel dressed out in his uniform here. He's got your typical nylon gear that an officer would have, magazine pouches, his radio, his OC spray, he's got his pistol, we've got his handcuffs, and he's got his vest on. He's ready to go. So now we're taking this from a takedown standpoint. He's managed to get the subject down on the ground and end up in the mount position. What you'll see here is although he's wearing all this equipment, he's used to working in this equipment. So although we have some restriction of movement and some reduction in range of motion, it's not going to be sufficient enough to distract Daniel from doing his job, and that's getting the subject to comply. Okay, Daniel, we just do this initially. We'll show you range in motion and your punches here. There again, how we can get involved in the punching. Although the vest starts to come up here under the armpits a little bit, he's still going to always biomechanically, through proper body mechanics, be able to make this punch where the bad guy can't make that punch. Also, let's show an arm bar, Daniel. Let's show the regular straight arm bar where you step over Aaron's head. Aaron's made the mistake. Daniel's coming up over into that same arm bar. Here again, he's working with the elbow down, pointed up towards the sky, palm pointing towards the sky. As Daniel pulls this to his chest, all he has to do is elevate his hips, and he gets submission right there, or gets compliance that we're looking for. Notice that here again, all the gear that he has does not present a problem for him. It's important that anytime we work, just relax your grip a little bit, it's important when we work in any of these techniques in full gear that we're conscious of what our gear is doing to us in these positions. For instance, if Daniel had a handcuff case in the small of his back, and he's in this position here, it's going to make it quite uncomfortable for him in the arm bar for the officer, as well as if it's bad positioning and there's a tremendous amount of power going to the ground like there would be, Daniel takes a chance of injuring his own self due to a misplacement of equipment. So we have to be conscious there. And all that would take, by the way, to correct that is shift that handcuff pouch maybe a little bit laterally to the right or left, whichever is going to be appropriate for the officer to do. But you can see everything else that he has on doesn't come into play, doesn't stop him from doing his job. The uniform has sufficient stretch to it that he has full range of motion. His flexibility is as good in his uniform as it was just a few seconds ago in his PT gear. Okay, back up into the mount. Here again, we can work the figure 4 mounts. There again, he's pushing down, coming back, going ahead, going for compliance. Just tap out, Aaron, anytime you get you feel the movement there. Okay, we get compliance there. There again, it doesn't create any hardship for him wearing his equipment. And this is important because we want him to get used to moving in all this gear. He's conscious now that he's got a radio here. He's got his OC. What I like here about Daniel's setup is that his OC spray is close, so his weapon is close to his firearm, which is important, his intermediate weapon. And that's important because with one forearm block here, he can protect, therefore, a short period of time, both weapons systems that he has on his belt right now. And then there again, he can work the other figure 4 technique, trapped it coming over the top of the tricep and going for compliance right there. Aaron felt that one, I would imagine, right away. So he goes for compliance right there. And that's what we're looking for here. In the area of our choking techniques or our neck restraints, there again, it's a game of semantics. A neck restraint is a chokehold. So for our neck restraints, he can come in here, Barry, you see Aaron's wearing sort of like a tank top. It's actually a sleeveless T-shirt. We don't need much effort here to make the scissors choke. He's coming across. He's going to spread his arms out and push down. And there's our compliance right there, going for the neck restraint. Here again, he can come around with a headlock. Pushing the fist goes into Aaron's Adam's apple on this side. Daniel will reach up and grab his own forearm. Now all he has to do is lay down on his fist and pull at the same time and getting submission or getting compliance through the pressure there on Aaron's Adam's apple. There again, I mentioned this a couple times. Anytime we attack the Adam's apple of a subject, that is a use of deadly force, in my opinion. It's a life or death technique. In other words, if your life depends on you using that technique, then by all means do that technique. Other than that, we pretty much stay away from the throat unless it's a life or death technique. If it's a job functional system we're looking for, we'll attack the carotid arteries on both sides of the neck, which is a job functional move, not a life or death move. Okay, and then we can put Daniel now into the side mount. Here again, we have not addressed weapon retention yet. I'm going to do that separately. Obviously, it all occurs at the same time. We're going to do it separately here just so it has continuity for you to understand while you're doing your own training. He comes in here. He's got a good solid base around the subject's neck. He's tried to pin the subject's arm in here, which he's done. He can go full power. Notice how he takes his knees off the ground to get full power. Daniel's a light guy. He's 165 pounds. He wants all 165 pounds down on Aaron to help him control him. From this position here, we've already got a position because Aaron's reaching over the top. Makes it a good position for Daniel going that reverse straight arm bar here. Pulling in tight and then trying working compliance there by pushing against the arm right there. And that's a straight arm bar. There again, Daniel, I like you to always come up on at least one knee when you do that. Keep that one close to his head. The reason I like you up on one knee when we're doing any of these techniques where you're in your on your knees, other than in the mount position, when I'm in a side position here at the armbar, when Daniel's on both knees, he has no mobility. In other words, to recover, to disengage, or to further engage, it makes it difficult when he's down on both knees. He has no mobility there. Pretty good stability, but no mobility. If he's up on both feet, on the balls of both feet, in like a squatting position, he has pretty good mobility, but notice he has no stability. So what we like to do is we like to have mobility and stability. We'll keep one leg up, one leg down. That gives us both of what we're looking for, allows him to perfect that reverse straight arm bar and get compliance that we're looking for there. Also in the side mount, Daniel's got the subject in the side mount. All our figure 4 techniques work again. We're also going to concentrate, like we mentioned before, keeping this hand close to the floor as he pulls it up and back, elevating this arm here and getting compliance right there. And you probably can't see, he's tapping on this side over here. Daniel's done a good job now of keeping the subject's arm inside, which helps protect his weapon. Daniel, unfortunately, is a left-hander, but if it is a right-hander, there again, this is helping control your pistol because you've trapped the subject's arm against his own body as opposed to it being free out there, which we'll do in just a second. So in any event, he can work the other arm bar that we have, where he's caught the arm coming in this way, or reverse to the same side arm bar where he's trapped it this way coming across through the tricep to the figure 4, now pulling straight back and up, going against the arm bar, and you see Aaron's body coming up off the ground, which is a good indicator that he feels a tremendous amount of pain. Okay, in a modified side mount, Daniel. Now Daniel's in a modified side mount. Daniel's a left-hander, so this would be a good position perhaps for him to be in to protect his weapons. Surely by lying on his weapon, he's providing a level of protection. Aaron's hand is free back here. If Aaron's hand was out in the other direction, then all that does for Daniel is it gives him an extra appendage to grab to go into there again, an arm bar. Perhaps applying pressure, and if need be, breaking Aaron's elbow over Daniel's leg. All he's got to do is move your leg up this way, Daniel. Now we got a good fulcrum there and a good base and good leverage to apply a lot of pressure. There again, we don't have to, we're not necessarily looking for breaks or snapping of the joints here on any of these techniques. We're looking for compliance. Unfortunately, due to the pain threshold, we may have to elevate our techniques to get compliance, and so we're certainly capable of taking these techniques all the way through their final stage, which would be the actual dislocation or snapping of a particular joint. But there again, it's your force, so your level of force that you use has to be commensurate with what the resistance is that you're receiving. Okay, and then in a guard position, Aaron will get in Daniel's guard. We're showing the 6 positions here. There again, Daniel's at the position of advantage. You come upon this scene, of course, unfortunate for the officer certainly, but realistic for him to be in this position. To the untrained eye, it looks as if Daniel's in the position of disadvantage. We know, hopefully now, through the things we've talked about, that is not the case. Here again, he's able to do arm bars from this position. Come across, reverse arm bar, locking his hand here. It's important to get the lock. Notice again here, these fingers are there, the thumb's on the opposite side. This is incorrect. Bring that thumb around here, and on the same side, that's wrong. So we don't want to do that. We want to grab with a thumb on one side, fingers on the other. He does the same thing to his own hand. He's already got an arm bar here. Through rotation of his hips outward, he's going to be able to get into position. There again, all your gear is going to drag along the ground or the street, but it's all going to drag freely. May get scratched up or whatever, but bottom line is you're going to be able to control the subject and go home at the end of the day. Another arm bar perhaps that he could use. We'll go a reverse straight arm bar here, Daniel. If the subject's going to stay in full extension here like Aaron is, then we can go into a straight arm bar using this elbow here. Get your elbow down here too, Danny. And we got the elbow working there now. His legs come into play, and now we're going for a reverse arm bar. Very painful here, and we've got good submission. At the very least, what I could do, or what Daniel could do, okay, Daniel, what I could do in this position here is hold the subject until help arrives. There again, the realities of where we're performing these techniques we can never forget. I don't have all day long to sit in the middle of
a neighborhood, a violent neighborhood perhaps, and sit there and roll around with somebody on the floor. If I've just made a vehicle stop and I've got a subject who's giving me a hard time and there's other occupants in the vehicle, I have to be very careful here again on how much time I spend on the ground, because another subject may get involved, kicking me in the head, striking me, choking me, bringing a weapon into play, whatever it happens to be. So these things all have to be done quickly, and there again, our selection of techniques keeps all that information in play, what our environment actually is in our surroundings. Okay, also Daniel's still in the guard. Aaron is still in Daniel's guard, and what we have here is we can work a series of chokes there again. Daniel will reach up and work that T-shirt choke with one of his favorites, just coming around the top to the other side, Daniel, reaching over the top, going in the direction of your fist and rotating around, going right into a windpipe choke. Excellent neck restraint. The other thing we can do here that we've done from the other positions is we can go into our scissors positioning here. There again, Daniel's going to use his legs to bring Aaron forward, let his elbows go out as he tightens that scissors. And then there we go. There's our compliance that we're looking for, so this subject stops resisting. Understand here, too, another thing that we didn't cover is the ability to communicate with the subject. We know that through all these techniques, stop resisting and you won't get hurt, stop resisting, you won't get hurt. As soon as the subject stops resisting, if I had him in a neck restraint, I'm going to loosen. Notice I didn't say release the grip, but I'm going to loosen the grip around the subject's neck. If I get full compliance and he allows me to get into a position of control, I do that, all with my hands in place. In this case, it was a scissors restraint. If he doesn't do that, he starts resisting again, then I have to give another reminder with that neck restraint that I'm in the position of control. So pay attention to what I'm saying. So, okay, and then also in this position, Daniel, the ability to do strikes from this position. Daniel needs to bring the subject, because he's lost his range of motion, he'll bring the subject into him, and now he's got those days of training in the gym are really paying off here on the road, because now he's doing a solid elbow strike to the subject, and they're going to be very effective because he's used to training on those focus pads that we talked about before. Same thing with his heel palm strikes. If he chooses to do that, he's going to bring Aaron into his range of combat, striking Aaron there, getting Aaron's attention off of doing damage to the officer. This buys time for Daniel to get into a position to perfect a more effective offensive move and to get the subject in a position of control. Okay, let's roll reversal now. Aaron, let me see. You're on top of Daniel in the mount. Okay, of all the 6 positions, this is the worst one you want to be in. Find yourself in as an officer. Daniel here is in the is a subject or victim to Aaron's mount position. Aaron's got full range of motion, etc. However, we're not dead in the water here. We can still respond effectively. Here again, as Aaron starts the fight, Daniel can choke from this position. First off, if Aaron's going to throw a punch like that, Daniel, we can use our buck technique and bucking Aaron off and moving into a position of control. Good job. Back again. So the buck, and once again I want to remind you that when we see the subject getting ready to punch, we can, don't buck him yet, but we can buck him up and bridge like Daniel did, and now the guy's got a choice. Either continue with the punch and fall over, like just happened, or release and stop the punch and try to achieve his base and keep him in front of him. Grab your base again, Aaron, when he goes, and that's what he's going to do. So either thing, it's a win-win situation for the officer. If he continues with the punch, the officer counters the technique and is now on the mount. If the subject is foolish enough or decides not to punch and rebases himself with a solid base with his hand out there, then Daniel didn't get punched in the face. So it's a win-win situation. The other thing we can do from here is we can do chokeholds from here. We got that cross chokehold you see has been effective in all 6 of our positions, or pretty much 5 of our 6 positions. Do the crisscross choke. Come in there with that scissors choke there. It's going to be effective there. We have the ability there again, if we can get Aaron's head down through grabbing him from behind the head, we can put the forearm there or that fist back into the face, go all the way around the head, and go all the way around the head, and go back to our T-shirt one. And then the other one too here, Daniel, I wanted to show is go ahead and get him in like a headlock here. fist to his throat and that choke there with her pulling up on his hand. That fist is embedded up under there. As he pulls in, pushes him down, that fist goes right there. And it doesn't take a lot of pressure there again on the windpipe to get full compliance to what we're trying to do. So those chokeholds are available. The strikes are available. Arm bars are available. We can go again here. The figure 4 arm bar is available that we looked at before, coming across over the top of the tricep, grabbing his own arm, and we told from that grunt that we got Aaron's attention right away. The other thing that we can do here is we got a straight arm bar that we can trap the hand, working a straight arm bar there, and by turning, he's going to come up in. If he continues to move, he's all the way into that straight arm bar. He also has a good wrist lock right here, put a tremendous amount of pressure on the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder, which is what we're trying to achieve. One thing I didn't mention either is that any time that we work in full gear, and one thing you did not see me do, but I did off cameras, I did a weapons check. My policy is I check the weapons of all the students in the class. I check the firearms personally myself. They pull the slide back. They visually inspect that it's empty and the magazine is not in the weapon, and I do the same thing to ensure that we have no accidents when we're doing this training. Okay, Aaron has Daniel in a side mount. There again, Daniel's got some options here that he can use. He can reach in and go for a front arm bar choke, or a front forearm choke, I should say, across the windpipe. Providing a lot of pressure here by grabbing the shirt. If he didn't have a shirt, we can dig a little bit deeper up onto the shoulder, pushing our arm forward and trying to achieve the same thing. Anytime Aaron attempts to resist this and starts pushing his head back, now we're given a position for the officer to go into another move. He's got an arm bar. He could have a chokehold with a scissors lock with his legs. And so it's kind of a no-win situation for the subject, which is what we like it to be. So if he stays down there and doesn't bring his head back, Daniel's going to end up getting compliance through the neck restraint. If Aaron's smart, he's going to move that head out of the way, and then here comes the lock with a little bit of help from his hands, and he's going to go right here with the arm bar, or he can go here with the choke. Either one. So very good job there. This is where our drill comes into play with pulling our hips out of the way. What we'll do here is Aaron's got him in a side mount, and Daniel will rotate his hips this way, roll a lot of power. Go, Daniel. Exploding with power. What you've done here now, you see in the mechanics of the body, Aaron had a good flat position at 90 degrees on Daniel. Notice he's not so flat anymore. We've created a space between Daniel and the subject, and I told you earlier that anytime we make a space, it means counter, and in this case that's good news for Daniel, because he's going to be in a position now to start countering this side mount technique that Aaron put him in. Aaron's in a real bad position now. He doesn't have a solid base because his lower back is bent, and he doesn't have the same grip because of the space that's created here that he had previously. So just this move alone, this explosive hip throwing away from the subject, has done Daniel a lot of favors and bought him a little bit of time, and that's all we're trying to do. Okay, what you see here is that Aaron is really got Daniel in a position of disadvantage. Aaron's in the advantage here because he's got Daniel in his guard, but we're not out of the game yet, and he can still fight in this position and fight effectively. One thing he's going to try to do from this position is he can still get his figure 4 techniques here coming through, making a tight grab on his own arm. We've showed this technique throughout the video. It's a good technique here. If Aaron has his hand down this way in an effort to draw a weapon or whatever he's attempting to do, we work that same figure 4 technique coming in now from the opposite side and working that technique there. We can work our stacking drill here where Aaron comes up with a closed guard position, and now Daniel gets him into a stack setup, makes it very uncomfortable, difficult for Aaron to breathe, and we take away a lot of his leg strength when we start bringing his body back this way. It's all a matter of positioning of the body. Another thing we can do here, if Aaron's got a closed guard, we have a closed guard up here, is Daniel can work some of those breaking techniques coming in, elbows to inside of the nerves that run down inside the thigh here. Very effective. I saw a wince there on Aaron's face as that happened. Maybe we can get that to happen again. Get him in a good closed guard and a good pressure there. You see the wince. There's a tremendous amount of pain there. In addition, that pressure point there when it's attacked pretty effective on releasing that guard from your back. The other thing we can do from here, we can pass the guard in general, which is one of the drills that we worked before. Go ahead, Aaron, and kind of a pass in the guard, move into a side mount. From the side mount, Daniel wants to go to a mount. And now Aaron's already made the mistake of giving Daniel his back. We talked about that. So he's a prime candidate here now for a carotid neck restraint, which there again is a job functional technique as well as a life or death technique depending on how long you squeeze the subject. Okay, another thing that we can do from here while Daniel's in the guard position of Aaron is that we can do some chokes from here. We don't ever want to forget the scissors choke. He comes across here, reapplies the other side, and as he pulls his elbows out, he leans forward. Understand, too, that we can do this particular restraint if Daniel comes across and buries this one and now just leans forward. Anytime we attack the windpipe, it's going to be effective for us, but I've told you before that's a high level of force. If we have to use it, we're certainly going to use it to save our lives. Another possible restraint from here, we can do the T-shirt restraint here, too, Daniel, depending on what position, rotating his head all the way around, back that way again. Depending there again, the flexibility of the officer involved and how much play we have in the subject's T-shirt if he's wearing one. And there again, we've shown all these techniques with the subject wearing some type of shirt. Well, the reality is maybe he won't have a shirt on. It doesn't matter. We'll just come in there and we'll use his head as the lock and come in and do this other. Daniel's not grabbing any clothing here now. He's doing an effective front choke, front neck restraint on the subject, and it's going to be effective in controlling Aaron for sure. Okay. All right. Let's do some rollovers. Let me see. Aaron, you're on top of Daniel. You're in the mount, Aaron. Here again, we want to see, we know Daniel can do neck restraints, arm bars, and strikes from the 6 positions with his equipment on. Can he do rollovers? His waist now, Daniel's probably a 32 or 31 size waist. We put this belt on him. We increase that waist size a couple inches on this side with the pistol, a couple inches more with the OC spray. And so now if we measure him all the way around, he's probably at about a 38-inch waist. Can he still do the same rollovers he did before? He'll come up and he'll trap the outside leg. He'll trap the arm, and he'll buck and bridge and roll. And the answer to that is yes. We've got the same problem now. We've increased the size of Daniel's waist. Does make a difference. We've got this little chalk, if you will. You remember chalk in your tires, keep them from rolling downhill. We've kind of got a permanent chalk here. This is Daniel's firearm. So we're going to have to roll powerfully to make sure Daniel doesn't get hung up right here. So he's going to do a buck and a bridge to this side. And it doesn't affect him whatsoever. So he gets around there real good. All right, we want to start working some edge weapon defense. Now there again, for safety purposes, we're using a rubber knife. Sometimes it's important we escalate the seriousness of the training. Maybe we'll take away the rubber knife and give him a wooden Tonto knife. That makes it a little bit more, you get hit with that, it's not going to stab you, but it's certainly going to get your attention real quick. So we can up the ante there again, even in training, to make it a little bit more realistic. But we're going to go ahead and use a rubber knife here because the importance here is working our technique first. There again, what we're looking for is that if Aaron is in the prep position, which means his arm is down, he's not yet done anything, then Daniel's okay and will be successful in using his one-hand control on that weapon hand and then go ahead and work his arm bars. Okay, let it prep. Under there, under his tricep right there. Yeah. Okay, and then there we've got the figure 4 arm bar that we're looking for there. Maybe he's pulled this thing out from down in his boot, and now Daniel recognizes that there's the prep position. He can go, he's free to go, and he's going to pull Aaron all the way back this side, all the way back this side. Coming back this side, pull his arm up off the floor, and we're going to pull it. Okay.
It's just if the pull is there.
Huh?
It's just if the pull.
Okay. Okay. Huh? Right. Aaron's range of motion isn't as good as Daniel's. He's a little thicker in the shoulders, perhaps, but too much weightlifting. But in any event, he's going to pull him all the way up. If he pulled him anymore, Daniel was afraid he's going to hurt him right there in that technique. The other thing that we can do now, we've got Aaron in the attack position. Here you go, Aaron. Get your knife ready to stab Daniel. Let's use an ice pick attack.
He's in the ice pick attack position, and a one-hand control here would be foolish. It'd be not only foolish, it'd be a fatal mistake. And so we don't want to do that. As soon as I see the attack position, I go to two-hand control. He's very tight now through the extension of his body, locking his feet in around Aaron's legs with his hooks like he's supposed to, and now extending that arm out. He can start making life real uncomfortable for Aaron and be in a control position here. The other thing that we can do is we get that same knife coming into the attack posture. We get the working this side, working the forearm down now into the elbow. Notice how the hand's already starting to open up. He doesn't want to hold that knife anymore. He wants Daniel, the officer, off his elbow before it snaps. So he's going to apply a tremendous amount of pressure on that. Now we go to a side mount position. The officer's in the side mount. Same thing as we saw before. When the officer sees the weapon in the weapon hand coming out, he can stop it in the prep position, go underneath, and go right to an arm bar. There again, we've got limited range of motion, and Aaron's hand's already opening, which is good for us, bad for him. Okay, the other thing is now we're in the side mount. Aaron has already made it. Well, we'll go to this position here. Aaron's in a pre-attack position. With there, we go right to a figure four arm bar again, keeping that arm in tight. You see we're starting to get Aaron to wince and his body movement, which tells us we are achieving what we want to do, and that's putting a lot of torque and forgetting about using the knife. If Aaron's already in the attack posture, which means the knife is coming up off the floor, we no longer want the one-hand techniques. We'll go into two-hand techniques with that alligator grip, and we'll twist that body in one way or the other, constantly being conscious of where that knife is and rolling all the way around, making it very difficult. You can see here he's managed to twist his body, getting Aaron into a wrist lock and an arm bar. The knife's already ready to come out. Okay, good. All right. Okay, now Aaron will be in Daniel's guard. Here again, when he grabs, if he's in this attack posture already, for instance, the ice pick attack, he'll make a block and grab at the same time with both hands. We know now Aaron, one leg of the table is missing, so it makes it easy for a good bridge and a buck. He's already trapped Aaron's legs on the outside here. That roll under now will be very effective. Roll. Now he comes, straightening the legs out, hooking his legs in here, going right back to the position that we were in before. Okay. Notice that Daniel at no time will release his two-hand grip as long as there's a blade or any other type of weapon in Aaron's hands. Another possibility, Aaron comes across in there. Daniel makes a two-handed grab and squeeze again, taking the body in that direction and bucking, rolling all the way through Daniel into a reverse arm bar. Coming all the way out. There we go. Into a reverse arm bar. All Daniel's got to do there for more compliance, push his hips down on Aaron's shoulders. He picks up Aaron's arm. As you can see there, it's starting to hurt a little bit. Okay, good. All right. Now, Aaron, we've done all. Okay, Aaron, you're on the mount now. You're on top of Daniel. When Aaron's in the mount, here again, he makes a two-handed grab on the knife hand. We want to get high up on the wrist. This is not good here. This is not good. We're losing a lot of leverage here, and Aaron's still real strong there. We start to gain leverage as we go closer up towards the blade. Good tight grip. Here again, he can trap the leg there, which he's done. He's got a table leg missing over here, so a good strong bridge and a buck and roll. Reverses the position, and there again we move into position. We're never going to forget about our strikes. We can strike to the groin area. We can strike to the ribs. We can do a lot of stuff with whatever weapons we still have left over, and there's several. Okay, from side mount.
Yeah.
Okay, from a side mount position. We got here again. This is a difficult position. I mentioned this before for the officer because of being able to see. Your vision is obstructed here. But as soon as we know, if Aaron, let's say Aaron's empty-handed, and he's up here and he's struggling with Daniel, and that hand all of a sudden disappears, we're going to make a positive, good assessment that he's going back for a weapon. We're going to try to check it when we can. He's got him in a pre-attack position here, so he's probably going to be able to hold it for a while. As soon as that arm comes free,
If this arm was to work up, we go to that figure 4, and maybe he can get some compliance there and get him to release the knife. If Aaron has already made that attack, Daniel was sleeping today, not doing a good job, came to here. It's two-hand control techniques. Here again, Daniel's going to use his ability to roll with that alligator grip and that alligator roll into a position of advantage and subsequent or eventual compliance from the subject. We can roll the other direction. Do that same move again. We can roll the other direction. He stopped him here. We can roll back this way, turning our body out. And there again, getting into the same position there, along with that alligator roll that we have. Good tight grip there. I like that. Okay. Lastly, we're going to have Daniel inside of Aaron's guard. Aaron's in a position of advantage here. Daniel, the officer's in a position of a disadvantage. Now, I've referred to that throughout the whole tape, disadvantage, advantage. I don't want the self-fulfilling prophecy here. Disadvantage does not mean that you can't fight, you can't survive. It just strictly means you'd be better off to be in another position than what you're currently in. So that's what we have here. There again is if Daniel recognizes the edge weapon attack in a pre-attack posture, he can check it with one good hand, and immediately the other hand's going to go into play for an effective arm bar, which is what we're getting here in the figure 4. If the knife was back here and the same thing, he can go into an effective figure 4 technique because he has the strength to control Aaron's one arm with Daniel's one arm. However, if Aaron has already passed the pre-attack posture and he's in the attack posture, his one arm won't control him anymore. He's got to go to two-hand control. He's going to do that. He's going to use that alligator rolling again, roll all the way through like you're doing on that forearm, and go into that position right there. And get him in that reverse arm bar by picking up on it. He's got a good wrist lock here. He can snap the elbow there. He's putting a tremendous amount of torque on the shoulder. So we're hurting this subject in 3 different places. Allows us to get compliance a whole lot quicker. All throughout the tape, we talked about police ground combatives. I want to reiterate here a couple key points. One is your policies and procedures and your state law will always play a major part in what techniques you're using out there on the street. Having said that, I think it's important to understand that if your life is on the line, there may only be certain techniques that you can use that are going to realistically save your life out there on the street in a ground combative situation. Never see yourself being carried out on a stretcher. When you visualize yourself in this aggressive, violent encounter, and you're resolving that violent encounter. You're preparing your brain to resolve the encounter and be a survivor. But that you don't see yourself certainly being carried out with a sheet over your head. You're not going to die. You're going to fight at all costs, and that's where your visualizing takes you to, is that even if you're cut, shot, no matter what it is, you're not dying. You're still fighting, you're still carrying on, you're still buying time. And that's what's important about the visualization.